Welcome to Summoner's Rift. Let me show you around. League of Legends is one of the biggest games out there, and understandably so, seeing as it's quote-unquote free to play. It has a minimum requirement of a CPU from at least the early 2000s and a GPU from the late 2000s, and it's incredibly fun to play.
Oh my god! What a f***ing play!
You don't believe me, don't you? Let me rephrase. League is more than just a game. It's more than just the toxicity it became infamous for.
You're trash!
It's more than the everybody who plays League hates League joke. It's more than the famous Netflix show Arcane. League has become something so much more. For starters, we have K-pop. We have cookbooks, a board game, and we have every single one of these breathtaking cinematics that gives us a peek at the vast potential of stories the world of Runeterra has to offer. What started out as some random bio entry serving as flavor text for your chosen champion eventually evolved into straight-up blockbuster movie-quality trailers. Riot has been graciously handling each character's lore really well for their fans, who have been waiting for years on any story elaboration at all. Which brings us to Bandle Tale. What this adorable game set in the Bandle Woods is all about, and what Bandle Tale could mean for the fans. Who the people are behind Bandle Tale, and why is the video titled as such. So lock in and let's go. Cue the intro. This game is a charming little thing. It's reminiscent of those Game Boy type games you would play as a kid. You get to experience the day-to-day life of a Yordle, cool spirits that take the appearance of whatever they want you to see them as. It has foraging, crafting, base building, and fishing. Best game! You get to meet familiar Yordles while you explore around Bandle City, the land no mere mortal can travel through normal means. And if they do, they most certainly never survive. A land of eternal sunshine where all your senses are at 1000% and the taste of the food lingers in your mouth forever. As for the name Yordle, it came to the game's producer and design lead Riot Forge in a dream where he just woke up screaming, Yordles. Even the game origin is just as magical. As for what the game is about, Bandle City is known to have portals that lead to different parts of the material world because they're just whimsical like that. And Yordles are known to party and enjoy their lives. Maybe they partied a little too hard during the game's events, throwing the portals into chaos, and it's up to you to fix it. The rest is up to you to learn in this bite-sized, self-contained experience. Dive into the game's story, where the rest of it is up for you to explore. Just like Bandle City, there are tons of other places set inside the League of Legends universe or Runeterra that are equally as interesting. Demacia, a region of discipline, honor, justice, and overzealous anti-magic knights. The nation built upon white stone known as petricite, a material with magic dampening qualities. They sought refuge in this nation following the aftermath of the Rune Wars, where everyone was pretty much just done with magic. But even the royal family is keeping magical secrets after the mysterious death of their current king. Or we can go to something more familiar, like Piltover and Zaun. This is where most of Arcane, the Netflix show, took place. Piltover, the more prosperous and technologically advanced, and Zaun, the underbelly with unfettered access to hex tech research. A combination of machine and magic, living in symbiosis despite being separated as a nation. Believe it or not, the world of Runeterra carries history. From forum headcanons that became plot relevant in-game, to well-thought-out, outright parasocial, alternate reality e-girl marketing. The main story has been overhauled so many times as well, both in an expansive, universe retcon way and through connections between each champion. The term summoner, the name Riot calls their players, isn't even in the story anymore. It's been gradually phased out until it reached obscurity, but only the real ones know what the Institute of War is. So here's a little flashback for you. The Institute of War is a neutral governing body that handles conflicts between factions. A summoner picks their champion to battle out on the fields of justice, the different maps available to the League of Legends. Yes, they call the organized battles League of Legends. They settle all of their differences here to avoid large-scale, destructive battles. And they slowly phase that story out in favor of a more immersive and relatable set of characters. Over time, these stories became bigger than the game itself. We started seeing collaborations between Riot and notable animators with side projects that further flesh out the stories of League. Riot also started their own efforts to flesh out the champions, and as a result gave us a different look on what their story could be, and not just what we knew from before. This cinematic trailer shows Tryndamere, the Barbarian King. In-game, he's known for being too angry to die. The cinematic shows him in his unending berserker rage, refusing to yield to Runeterra's equivalent of the Grim Reaper, Kindred. He fought off what he thought was Kindred, but then was shown to have been fighting the soldiers that surrounded him. What eventually quelled his rage to save him was his wife, Ashe, managing to snap him out. Peak storytelling, I tell you! Since his initial release as one of the first few champions in 2009, he was just known as a funny haha undying barbarian like the trope. The release of the cinematic in 2024 was more than a decade of story in the making. Now he's deep. There's a continuous war inside him, between holding onto his clan's magic of staying alive during a violent rage and holding it back to never let it consume him fully. All of that beautiful writing poured into awesome visuals. The introduction of Legends of Runeterra also slowly flipped a lot of Riot's character design and stereotypes on their heads, and somehow made the characters their own. What looked like stereotypical clones of popular culture figureheads and beauty standards evolved into wholly original characters. Caitlyn's initial design portrait looked like it was supposed to be something you see on a pin-up calendar. She even had a line in-game that said,
"Sorry, boys. I keep the fuzzy cuffs at home."
The look and story was everywhere, and she ended up looking like a porn parody of herself. Legends of Runeterra fixes her design with a more functional uniform with no needless use of cleavage for an officer. She looks like a respectable character without sacrificing any of the visuals. The leveled up version even gives you a reason to fear her, as you'll realize, right, she's a cop. Another example would be Jinx. Jinx was initially thought of as a Harley Quinn clone with a duotone design, less than okay mental state, and the attachment to everything guns and explosives. She also talks to herself and her guns a lot. Both her League of Legends lore of being a thorn in the Piltover officer's sides and the arcane lore of someone with a very complex trauma kind of removed her as the Harley Quinn clone, and she became her own character once again. Note that all of these are happening simultaneously in the past few years. As the lore expanded, Riot is encouraged to create alternate storylines beyond the canon based on skins of champions. Notable ones like KDA, the skin line of female characters as an idol group, Heartsteel, an all-guy idol group, and True Damage, a more Western pop group. It became so much easier to become more invested with the characters. Why wouldn't any League fan be? You get to see your favorite characters in a new light, and you're given better ways to enjoy it, aside from reading small tooltips with a line of text that necessitates you to play League of Legends. You're given comics, music with insane visuals, and short stories. There were massive limited time in-game events that connected to the alternate skins. Star Guardian had an event where they gave us a limited time only game mode called Invasion, where it turned LoL into a PvE. Star Guardians also gave us the most heartbreaking music video ever, Everything Goes On. Without going over too much detail, they also did a visual novel with League characters. I love Lilia so much. She's so hot. Just look at her. Eep! They also disabled the character because he canonically got killed in the story, only to survive the attack and be back with a vengeance and a visual and gameplay overhaul. You know what the biggest bamboozling of 2021 is? When Arcane was released, a lot of fans of the show thought they could hop into League of Legends and experience the same storytelling magic. However, all they experienced was getting stomped by players better than them with more than hundreds of hours under their belts. Which brings us to Riot Forge and why they're so important. Riot Forge is Riot Games partnering with third-party developers to bring you different ways to experience the League universe. They create bespoke games that can tell their own story based on how the devs want to tell it. Remember how I said Arcane misled a lot of people into playing LoL and underwent a rude awakening? And how giving the fans new ways to experience League aside from the MOBA experience is always going to be a positive, if not a better outcome? This is exactly what Riot Forge aims to do, because 1 or 2 cinematics a year and a few things to read just isn't gonna cover how expansive the universe is. And overexpand on the universe they did. For minigames, we've seen Project Execute, Cho'Gath Eats the World, and Astro Timo. Short, simple, charming games that give you the premise of what these characters are all about while giving you a peek at what the world could be. On the other hand, a little bigger game like Mage Seeker, an action hack and slash game, can go even further in-depth with its main character, Silas. Remember Demacia, the one with the anti-magic rocks called Petricite? They have these high officials called Mage Seekers who hunt down anyone with even the slightest of magical abilities. Yes, you can imagine how this can go wrong, like imprisoning innocent people or driving them into hiding. Silas, our protagonist, was imprisoned because his magic went out of control and accidentally killed Mage Seekers. He wallowed in prison until he learned the Petricite shackles chaining him didn't dampen magic. They absorbed it. And with this knowledge, he absorbed as much magic as he could from Lux, the royalty with magical powers, to blast out of prison. He kept the chains on to serve as his own weapons to control his magic, and to remind himself of where he came from before he joined the revolutionaries against Demacia. Isn't that just so sick? Don't you just love how fragile the beliefs of overzealous paladins are? I love this game so much. There are plenty more gems made by Forge that tackle the world of League through more than just LoL. There's Ruined King, which is about the sad boy Viego of the Shadow Isles. There's Song of Nunu, which is about a boy and his magical Yeti friend. All of these games have the subtitle A League of Legends story, perfectly encapsulating that each one of these is a focused story set in a small part of the world. And one of them is Bandle Tale. This finally brings us back to Bandle Tale, A League of Legends story. I know what you're thinking. This is simply a story-ish farming game. What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is what could only be described as one of the worst days for Riot. On the 22nd of January 2024, Riot announced a massive layoff, hitting 530 employees. This affected almost all ends of the creative field, from writers to animators and even concept artists. And without going too much into detail, as this might need its own video, this decision was made for them to focus more on their core games, League of Legends, Teamfight Tactics, Valorant, and Wild Rift. They also talked about how this is the end of Riot Forge, as it costs more to develop than the revenue it has earned. Riot Games added that Legends of Runeterra will mostly be focused on Path of Champion, a player versus environment game mode. To a lot of players' concern, this means that the PvP aspect of it, and similarly, the creation of new sets of cards are not going to be as supported moving forward. As a result, no more new characters nor stories where we can glean flavor text in cards from. This will totally depend on how they're going to handle Path of Champions. But from how it is right now, not a lot of players are left with hope. So what now? The story of League will still continue for sure, right? We might lose the more focused ones like Forge, or the smaller flavors of Legends of Runeterra, but they will still continue, right? They might end up marketing $25 skins in the guise of a story before we even know what the champion does, but that's better than nothing now, right? Well, it's too early to tell, but even the brilliant minds behind the recent cinematic I talked about before, Still Here, got impacted by the layoffs. They only found out within the day, so this does not inspire hope. There's no sugarcoating this. It really is sad, and this video is not enough to cover all the reasons why it is. Lots of people lost their jobs, even those who had been there for years. It's hard to deny that profitability has always been the focus, but it's incredibly more apparent now that there's no form of storytelling to distract us from it. Maybe another ARG? Maybe more skin bundles or chromas to sell? Valorant isn't safe from this either. They've only recently been on the upswing with stories and the writing, and the layoffs could significantly affect their trajectory. But if all else fails, hey, maybe check out this new gun bundle. We've only recently gotten the S in Riot Games, and now it feels like they've taken a few massive steps back. This doesn't take away from the storytelling that happens in canon, unintentionally or even written by the players themselves. After all, we've waited more than a decade for these things to happen. What's another 10? Braum has always told us,
The darker the night, the brighter the stars.
so chin up, Summoner.